Chris Collins, thank you so much for inviting me to your very favorite bar, the horse you rode in on in
Absolutely.
Baltimore.
Historic Fells Point of Baltimore, Maryland.
Wow, we exchanged some information earlier, and you told me that this was from the 17 something, 1770s. And on the basis that America is just about 250 years old, this is old for America.
I know this isn't an old pub by Irish standards, but in the U.S., this is quite an historic landmark for us.
So tell me, listen, there must be a story. There has to be a story. How does a young man like yourself have a favorite bar that's 250 years old?
Well, when you asked me for my favorite bar in Baltimore, I have to confess it took me a while to whittle down the list because there's quite a few watering holes that I've enjoyed over the years in Baltimore. What I like about this particular establishment, Gary, is really it's a sawdust on your floor. Let's go have a pint with your mates. Good old fashioned bar, and I love the history behind it. So,
Hmm.
I mean, again, the oldest bar in Baltimore, established in 1775, the only tavern that actually made it through the few years that the U.S. got a little crazy and decided to try prohibition. So, this is the only tavern that made it through that time of prohibition. And then,
Well,
interestingly enough, this was Edgar Allan Poe's favorite bar. So, you'd often find the famous poet sitting at the bar having his favorite Jack Daniels drinks, and was the last place he visited prior to his death.
well, it's an extraordinary and probably so stereotypical that I welcome the incoming Schneider Irish manager via a bar into Ireland. But I'm hoping that now that you have all your relevant paperwork sorted out, that you'll enjoy many days and many evenings with colleagues in different types of bars, because we can't say they're all alcoholic anymore because bars are changing. They're changing. And it's great that through a place of comfort like a bar, that people actually all have stories because,
Yeah.
as you say, there's history in them. There's been a few good, I'd say in this bar, there's been a few good fights. I'm getting
I'm sure there's been plenty over the
um,
years.
and maybe that's Hollywood, though. Maybe that's Hollywood. Like you see these great bar brawls, and they're
Yeah.
big, bombastic things. And in my experience, when anytime I've seen any fisticuffs, it's always just one big haymaker, and he misses, and then it's all over. So maybe it is just Hollywood. So listen, I've asked you a few questions.
Yep.
I've given you a few questions earlier, just to get a sense of what type of person and bloke you are. And what have you learned in the
So,
last 24 hours?
so that was an interesting question. I actually was back in Baltimore this weekend. My niece was getting christened, and my sister married a nice Irishman, last name of Cassidy. So my niece Saoirse was getting her christening, and my brother-in-law and his father at the after party were filling me in on all I need to know about Dublin. So one thing that's interesting is actually my great 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 grandfather, John Patrick Welsh, is from County Mayo.
Okay.
He immigrated to Baltimore, Maryland in 1856 and actually owned a pub not a block away from the bar that we're sitting in now. He was a policeman and owned a pub, so true Irishman, right?
He was the stereotypical bang right there, right?
But what it was interesting learning from my brother-in-law and his father, just what I can expect culturally in Ireland. And my brother-in-law made it very clear that my kids were not allowed to become Dublin fans, and I don't know why, but he said that you can't have them be Dublin fans. So he brought me two jerseys from Mayo County and got them for my boys. And so I learned all about the red and green and the history behind the club. And I'm very much looking forward to learning a little bit more about the Gaelic football when I get over there.
Well, there you go. Because right out of the bat, you're going, but with your county colours,
Yep.
nailed. And I guess the good news for you is that they have been relatively successful the past decade. The
I heard there's
bad
some
news
bad news though, right?
there is, yeah, they've
They've
been,
got a curse.
yeah, that's the challenge is that they're so going back 50, 60 years,
Yeah.
something happened. They didn't give somebody a lift. But the Dublin team, where your actually your offices are in me Kildare.
Yep.
in
Well,
youth.
Maynooth, just right. Yeah.
Yeah, so the Dubs anyway, which you've been told not to support, they're on a 6 or 7 year roll of retaining the championship. So, and unfortunately, Mayo have been the other
They've
side of
lost 3 or 4 times over that
they've
period, right?
lost 3 or 4 side times. So, I think what you should do is reserve the right to make your own choices,
Okay.
depending. So, because both teams may be in the final quite a bit, you can then choose.
And I will be living in Dublin, so I'm
You
sure that
will.
there's going to be some local pubs, and I'm going to make some acquaintances in those pubs. And
Chris, I do the same. I'm a Dub, but I live in Wicklow on the
okay,
border. So I reserve the right to be a Dub on those certain days when it works for us, right? And you
yeah,
should do the same.
will
So
do.
that's a good thing to learn. And definitely Gaelic, great sport. Amateurs played at an incredible level. The other sport which you will see and you will learn, and it's just about legal, is hurling. So we'll have a chat when you come over. Hurling is just
I cannot wait to learn, and I'm sure my boys are gonna be very excited to try some new things.
oh yeah, oh yeah. That's lacrosse at a different level. Trust me. You want to write a book, or you don't want to write a book. You're thinking to write a book. If you were that way
Yeah.
inclined, what would it be? What would be in your self-help book?
I love that question. So I am a big sports fan, and for us in the U.S., right, it's primarily baseball and football. American football is what I grew up watching. I'm a big Baltimore Ravens fan. They're my favorite NFL team. We have this. If you've ever paid attention to the sport over the last couple of years, we have this very dynamic quarterback that's now at the head of our team, Lamar Jackson. Extremely fast. He's just a dynamic, electric player. And he was up at a press conference last year, and when he was coming out of the draft and coming into the NFL, a lot of people were criticizing him that he couldn't throw the ball, and they wanted him to change positions as a running back. And he said, "No, I want to play quarterback." Well, they were asking him about the his experience going in the NFL at a press conference, and he had this great shirt on that I just love. But on the shirt, he said, "No one cares. Work harder." So if I was writing a self-help book, I think that would be the name of my self-help book. No one cares. Work harder. And what I mean by that is, and I try to instill this in my boys, throughout life, you're going to have ups, you're going to have downs, you're going to have advantages, you're going to have disadvantages based on where you live, who you know, what people you meet. And at the end of the day, there's some luck of the draw, but all you can control is how hard you work and the effort you put into it. So
Yeah.
I really don't care how my kids do in school as long as they're giving it 110%. I don't care if they win or lose on the sports field as long as they're giving 110%.
Hmm.
So if I were going to write a self-help book, I think that would be the title.
It's amazing when you say things like that because when you look back at sport and if you played a bit, you realize luck also seems to gravitate to those who work a bit harder.
Absolutely.
I think
And
Jack.
I think it's the same thing in our business life, right?
Well, the
People that
world
have
gets.
success usually they're the ones that are put in the effort and
It's so right.
practicing their craft, and
Yeah, the world gets run by those who turn up. You know,
showing
and
up's half the battle.
and the other thing that I remember from golf, which I'm not a big golfer, but Jack Nicklaus, I think, said once that the harder I practice, the luckier I seem to get.
Yeah.
So I think
All
that
very, very, very similar philosophy. Yeah, absolutely.
it's the same similar philosophy. So I'm going to ask you one final question. What, if anything, are you most looking forward to in relocating to Ireland?
Oh man, that's a great question.
I
Uh,
couldn't
uh,
read my writing. I couldn't read my writing here. So I couldn't ask you the question I was going to ask you.
yeah,
So what are you most looking forward to? And I guess this can cross over into business because you're coming over. You're country manager. It's geographically dispersed. What are you most looking forward to? I know everybody says, "Well, I'm most looking forward to working with my colleagues and stuff." But when it gets down to it, there's obviously personal things as well that you might be looking forward to.
well, on the business front, what I'm most looking forward to, I think, is really getting to know the team. And I've already had a lot of one-on-ones, a lot of Zoom calls, and I'm finding a lot of passion within the team. And one thing that really drives me, and I've taken this through my last couple of roles, is the ability to really drive and build a strong team culture. I'm a huge believer in teams. Again, I'm a big sports guy, right? Grew up playing sports, and I think that applies to the business world as well.
Hmm. Mm.
And I've seen this. It's just like in sports where we have the teams where you have one or two star players that don't want to play as a team and they don't have the success. Then you have the teams where it's the guys that are working hard, but they treat it like a team. They pass the ball, they work together. Business is the same way. So I'm really looking forward to working with them and building that team culture within the group. Because Schneider is a big company. We have so many offers. And when we can get our teammates working together and bringing all these different solutions and offers to market for our customers, I think that there's not a company in the world that can bring the value that we do
Mm.
when you have that type of culture. So that's on the business front. That's what I'm looking forward to. On the personal front, eh, I'm really looking forward to building some relationships and making some friends in another country. You know, for us, this is the first assignment I've had that's outside the U.S. I've lived my entire 48 years in the continental United States. So learning a different culture and then getting to experience that with my two boys and my wife, we're very much looking forward to stepping out of our comfort zone, learning some new sports, making some new friends, finding our favorite pub on that side of the pond. I think
Yeah.
that's what we're looking forward to.
Yeah, and obviously it's the famous old story of a guy who was lost, feeling a bit lost in County Kerry, and he asked a local how he would get to the Gap of Dunlow, and the local says, "Well, if I was going to the Gap of Dunlow, I wouldn't start from here." And I think that there's a little bit of that for all of us as we come out of COVID, is that we're all going to have to come out finding different ways and different thoughts. So it's a really interesting time to be coming to a new country, as the country itself is not quite status quo. But thank you so much for your time. That's
Oh,
the
I
first
really
thing.
enjoyed it, Gary. Thanks for setting this up.
No, looking
And thank you
forward.
for sharing my favorite pub with the team.
Yeah, there it is. There it is. There's the favorite bar.
If you ever get to the horse you came in on in historic Fells Point, Baltimore, Maryland, make sure that you try the crab pretzel.
Crab pretzel. Okay. Well, the interesting thing that I found through my research, and we spoke briefly about it, was on some bulletin boards it's called the horse. It's definitely called the horse, but on some of them, and I guess it depends on your experience, it says
Yeah.
the horse you rode in on, but on others it says the horse you rode out on. So I guess back in the day, sometimes that horse was the same, or depending on how the cards went, it could be different.
I guess it depends on how many pints you consumed at the horse.
That's right. That's right. So thank you for your time. We wish you the very best. That's the first thing. We'll see you very soon. And thanks a lot, and stay safe.
Thank you, Gary. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.